There's very few Civil War battlefields that you can go to that have the kind of impact that this place has here. April 1865, the Army of Northern Virginia is on the move, and they meet with the Union Army here at Saylor's Creek. At this location, they lose a quarter of their army over the course of this battle. And the battle takes place in 3 different locations. It's really 3 separate engagements that end up culminating in a massive defeat for the Confederate Army, and one that ends up pushing Robert E. Lee to say, "My God, has the Army dissolved?" So I'm at a location called Holtz Corner right now. And out here at Holtz Corner, Saylor's Creek battle really started. General Crook's cavalry met Anderson's brigade out here. And Anderson was supposed to be headed south toward Rice's Station. But he ends up meeting that cavalry here, and he opened up a gap between him and the rest of the Confederates. From that point on April 6th, the fight would be on. After being attacked here and the cavalry swinging around between the gap, Anderson moves his men further south, and he ends up at Miller's Crossroads. He takes up a position over there, and Ewell would be right beside him on the left-hand side. But really the fight starts here at Holtz Corner, at this crossroads or intersection that's directly behind me, right there. I'm currently out here in an area called Miller's Crossing. Now this is the location where Anderson's men eventually set up shop on the other side of Ewell. And this is after fighting at Holtz Corner eventually, or initially at the beginning of the fight. But his men along with Pickett are stretched out here at this crossing. Now this place is one of a series of places along Lee's retreat for the Civil War trails. You can follow the interactive map on their website and actually go to each individual location along the route leading to Appomattox. And this is one heck of a place to visit. The battlefield really is in the middle of nowhere, and it's very well preserved because of that reason. There's a lot of trails out here, and it's really not that busy. It's a great place to go to. Now out here at Saylor's Creek, this is one of the rare places where restoration is worked out, and the advantage is to the person that comes out here. Minus the road in the background where the cars drive past, it's kind of easy to put yourself in that place at that time. And behind me there's the Hillsman House, and you can see clear down to the tree line there where the creek is, and up on the other side where the Hillsman House is, where the Union soldiers would have been forming and getting ready for battle. Some of the deadliest combat that happened out here actually happened in this location on this field. When the Confederates took off and started coming out this way, they basically had a plan to travel down 5 routes. The Army was splitting up in several locations and coming from different areas, and they were going to meet together at Amelia Courthouse. And the plan simply was this: meet together, turn south, and head toward Johnson. Strengthen the Army by getting rations and fatten it up as much as possible, so that they could have a stronger force to fight the United States Army when they met again. But Lee did not expect Grant and the United States Army to meet them as fast as they did. They thought that they would revel in their victory and that they would stay in Richmond and Petersburg for a while, allowing them time to escape, essentially, and possibly get to a railroad and send troops even further south. But it didn't happen. There was a dogged pursuit, and the United States Army was on their tail the entire time. So to set the stage here, Lee sends off to Richmond and tells Jefferson Davis to evacuate the city. He also says he needs rations sent to Amelia. And the plan was supposed to be set. Everything is good. Rations are sent. Army's supposed to meet at Amelia. Well, when they get there, the trains are filled with ammunition, weaponry of all kinds. Everything and anything an army could want to fight a war, and zero to feed an army. So here's a good look at the terrain at Saylor's Creek. Rising up behind me here was that hill that I was standing on, where you could see the Hillsman House off in the distance. And I'm on the trail that they have out here. And I'll flip back around towards where that house was that you could see earlier. And now all you can see is the trees. There is no way you can see anything beyond those trees right now. And even then, there's some depressions directly behind me. Hope you can see that. Where the hills go up and then back down. So when troops are coming up across this creek and they're going over top of the hill where I'm at, there's still places where they can lay low and still not be seen by the enemy. But if you're standing on top of the hill right up here, you have the best vantage point possible. There's a young man in the Confederate Army out here, and he's been fighting with them for a long time. He's earned the rank of sergeant. He's with an artillery unit. One of his most harrowing moments comes when he's in Gettysburg. He's fighting across from a peach orchard, and at the corner of that peach orchard stands a small house with a couple of elderly people in there and some youth. The people that are in that house are related to him. It's his parents. I'm talking about Sergeant Wentz. Sergeant Wentz joined the Confederate Army, and he traveled north to Gettysburg and is now firing artillery pieces towards his own home. Sergeant Wentz makes his way here to Saylor's Creek. This place would be the end of the fight for him, and his parole wouldn't come until June of that year. Now, Henry Wentz came from Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, and his father, John, lived out there with his wife, Mary, and they had a small house. It was near the Joseph Sherfy peach orchard. Now, that wouldn't have been that big of a deal in history. Nobody would have known anything about it had it not been for the battle and the subsequent fight that happened at the peach orchard there. But it became an ironic tale of a man that's from the north that moves south to Martinsburg to start his own carriage business and ends up joining the Confederate Army in April of 1861. His father disowns him immediately. Doesn't want to have anything to do with that. Tells him never to come back again. Well, he comes back with the Confederate Army in tow, and he fights directly across from the property from where his family was. He continues to fight for the Confederate Army till he gets right here at the Battle of Saylor's Creek. And somewhere out here in these fields near where I'm at right now, his fight ends. Henry Wentz ends up surrendering. And on June 21st of 1865, he takes the oath of allegiance. And once again, he's brought back into the fold as an American and not a Confederate. So Lee, not having supplies for his army, sends his quartermasters out with a note. The note simply asks all the people in the area to give whatever they can to the army that's been fighting for them for the last 4 years. On the 5th, when those quartermasters return, they return without a thing. So on April 5th, Lee resumes the march. He finds out that the Union soldiers are in Jetersville. He knows he can't go that way. He doesn't have a force that's strong enough or large enough to smash through the Union soldiers there at Jetersville. He needs to go around. And that kind of sets up where we're at right now here at Saylor's Creek. So I'm walking over a very marshy area, as you can tell right behind me, down towards the creek right now. They get here, and the fight ensues on 3 different points. So I'm standing right now on the bank of Little Saylor's Creek. You can see the creek flowing behind me right here. Now, as we were talking earlier about how Lee had to go around, he ends up taking his men a little bit north and goes to Rice's Station. Now, at Rice's Station, he thinks that he can set up shop there and resupply his men and then redeploy whenever he needs to, and then eventually make his way south from there. But he doesn't realize that the Union soldiers are still in hot pursuit and that they would be meeting up with him soon enough. Lee's men march all day April 5th. They march all night. They're marching in a heavy rain. And they can't seem to get any rest. The fight to survive is real. There are men that fall asleep while marching and march right out of the path and fall off the side of the road. There are men that straggle off for food and get captured. One soldier in the United States Army said that at that point in time, there were so many Confederates taken prisoner that they could count them by the thousands. Now, during the forced march on April 5th, leading up to the 6th, it was noted that the Confederates were throwing off to the side anything that they could get rid of at the time. That would include blanket rolls, gear that was too heavy, and a lot of the soldiers that were captured out here were being described as scarecrow thin from starvation while they were in the trenches in Petersburg. The utensils and things that were found were even remarked by General de Trobriand, who said that the Confederates were getting rid of every loose article that they could get rid of, including wagon loaded down with cooking utensils of all sorts of accoutrements and heavy iron skillets and things like that. So it was a pretty interesting situation for them, especially considering at the time they had absolutely no food. So of course they're going to get rid of the things that they cannot use, which are the things to cook food that you do not have. Now, as I look at this wet and marshy land that's out here, I'm kind of reminded of what one soldier from Longstreet's Corps said as he was marching through here on that forced march. He said that my shoes are gone, my clothes are nearly gone. I'm weary, sick, hungry. My family have been killed or scattered. I have suffered all this for my country. I would die, yes, I would die willingly because I love my country. But if this war is ever over, I'll be damned if I ever love another country again. Now, of course, Longstreet's men's going to say that. Any of those soldiers are going to say that at that time. If you think about it, they were so fervent about their feelings and their beliefs that they would put their lives on the line to continue to fight. But then they get right down to it, and they're being pursued here, and you can kind of see the writing on the wall. It's pretty much over, and they know it. And they're out here fighting the last battles, thinking that maybe they can escape, maybe they can get south to Johnson, maybe they can continue this war effort. But it's all for naught. It's in vain. They're going to fight here, and some of them are going to die here, and die in future areas, like Appomattox, right before it's all over with. And some of them will be taken prisoner here, like Sergeant Wentz, and they won't go on parole until June of 1865, when some of their comrades actually surrendered at Appomattox, 72 hours from now, from April 6, 1865, in 72 hours, and they will be allowed to go home. So there's a Union soldier out here that's pretty famous, and he's famous because of his brother mostly. General Custer is a Cavalier, and he's the same Custer that ends up at the last stand at Little Bighorn. His brother, however, does the most amazing thing out here. He earns the 2nd Medal of Honor. He's the only soldier in that United States Army to do that. He ends up getting shot in the face while grabbing a banner and taking that banner back to the lines, exclaiming, "They got me in the face, but I got their banner." That's a pretty amazing feat. It's a tall order to win and be awarded 1 Medal of Honor, but on top of it, a 2nd Medal of Honor. That's something else. And it just goes to show the kind of desperate hand-to-hand fighting that happened out here at Saylor's Creek. Right now I'm going in the direction of where the 2nd Rhode Island would have went after the first attack or first assault, heading back down towards the creek. So Wheaton and Oliver comes across that creek with their units, and they head up here, and Wheaton's unit is closer than Oliver's. Ewell's men are set up on the hill behind me there, behind that ridge line. They drop to their knee, level their muskets, and fire. And the next thing you know, the 2nd Rhode Island scatters, goes back across this creek in front of me, and heads towards that house just on the upper ridge when the next line of battle comes through and makes their way up here to this hill where Ewell's men are. Now, Elijah Hunt Rhodes took a real famous photograph with all of his officers in his unit with 2nd Rhode Island. And in that picture, his best friend can be seen in the background. He's a real tall man. During that picture, and just before the battle, he tells Elijah, "The next big battle we're in, if we win, the war may be over and we can go home." Well, his friend dies here at Saylor's Creek. Now for a little battlefield orientation, we'll pop up the map here so you can take a look at it and give you about a few seconds to see the position of the men out here from the American Battlefield Trust. Now directly ahead is the Hillsman House over there. Artillery was placed around that house. It's also placed on this ridge line here. And the Union soldiers are placed here, wrapping around, and they're coming in this direction towards Ewell's men, which are placed up here on the ridge line, a high point. Also, going off in this direction are the Union soldiers as well. And then headed back in this direction, there's a gap in between the two units that are out here, or the two separate areas, Anderson and Ewell, and then Pickett's men are back in this direction here. And that is exactly how this fight happens. It starts to unfold at the crossroads behind me there, where Anderson's men are. And then the engagement happens here at this point, which is another position of failure. And then off in this direction over here, the Lockett Farm position is out in that area, and we'll take you over there here in just a minute. I'm approaching a position called the Hillsman House now. And at this location, this would have been a Union hospital for both Union and Confederate soldiers here after the Battle of Saylor's Creek. Now from this position here, the Union artillery was placed. And off in the distance over there is where those Confederates are on that ridge line. The barrage was kept up over here for about a half an hour, and then the Union soldiers stepped off in an eerie silence as they were headed down towards the creek, which is down in that low depression over there, where the tree line is. Eventually, Confederates got their blood up, and they end up charging up in this direction and breaking through some of the Union lines. But once they get to the position across the creek, it was pretty much useless, and they end up surrendering. But the barrage was so bad because on that other side there, the units that were in location had lost their own artillery just days before in a fight at Painesville. And that's one of the primary reasons why the artillery over here really went without any kind of a fight. They were firing directly into soldiers with muskets and no artillery in place. Now, depending upon where you come into this park, either from Holtz Corner or from the Miller's Crossroad, depends on what your orientation is for this battlefield. If you're coming in from Miller's Crossroads, you'll pass right by a trail to walk down where Pickett's men would have been. And Pickett had a very small force during this battle, mostly due to men surrendering along the route and succumbing to basically starvation. Now, another neat thing about this battlefield, there's a lot of igneous rock formations that are out here. So it kind of reminds you of really like Devil's Den up in Gettysburg. And that definitely had to play a part in the battle out here, especially when you're talking about artillery pieces and where to place them. So it's a real neat feature out here at this battlefield. If you come out here and hike around, you can definitely go see it. It's really cool. There's a lot of good stuff out here to see. Imagine, if you will, for a second, you're a Union soldier. You got the feeling that the fight's about to be over with. You're doing everything you can for victory. You're coming from that direction over there. You're charging down this hill in straight lines of battle in formation, headed towards a boggy creek down below. The Confederates are on the other side. They pull handkerchiefs out of their pockets and they wave them around once they get past the creek, as a symbol to the Confederates, hey, it's okay to surrender. We'll take you to the other side. They were not yet ready to surrender. Near the position where I'm at right now, General Wheaton's men formed up in a line of battle, and they looked ahead of them, just like I'm looking ahead of me right now, and they could see the creek. Now, at that time, there was so much rain that poured down the days before that the creek had actually breached the bed. It was pretty flooded out here. Phil Sheridan, with his blood up, comes riding up along the lines. And Wheaton, of course, expresses his angst over the creek that's laying ahead and his flank. He's worried about his flank. And Phil Sheridan looks at him and says, "The enemy is there. I want you to form your brigade in one line, cross the creek, and carry the heights. Never mind your flank. Go through them. They are demoralized as hell." He could feel that the end was really close. He knew that the enemy across the river, or across the creek here, wasn't going to put up that big of a fight. That's why he sent Wheaton across this creek as quickly as he could. Although it would turn out to be not that great of an idea. When Wheaton's men get across, finally, they form their lines back up. They head up that hill that's directly in front of me, and they take a massive fire straight to the face. They fall back across this creek in rapid succession. You know, out here, Elijah Hunt Rhodes was with the 2nd Rhode Island, and he famously said, "So near the end, yet men must die." And that's really the story here at Saylor's Creek. It's one of those stories where you think about the closer that they drew to the end. I'm sure those soldiers were thinking about why so many had to die. So now for some battlefield orientation. We talked earlier about Wheaton's men lining up in battle formation before heading to the creek. So in front of you here is the creek bed that we were talking about. Up there is the heights, where the Confederate soldiers are waiting for them all along this ridge line here. And they have to go across the creek, which had been spilling over the bed itself, and so all of this land down through here is marshy and muddy. It's difficult to get through. Shoes are getting stuck. There's no getting cannons down through there for sure, and horse and men are in a mess all over. And they're coming from this direction here. The Hillsman House is up on top of that hill, and the artillery pieces, about 20 of them, are on the ridge lines going off in this direction here. So as you can tell, this is still a very difficult fight for these men here at Saylor's Creek. Nothing is going to come easy for the United States Army. like Gordon has his men just on the other side of this house. Humphreys is in pursuit and pushes him past this position just to the fields beyond me here. Eventually, Gordon ends up at Little Saylor's Creek along the 2 bridges where the wagons are bogged down. Humphreys pushes him past that creek, and it's not until he gets past that creek that he's actually able to stand and stop the fight and protect his men at that point. But at that point, it was already too late. The Battle of Saylor's Creek is over, and it is a major, major victory for the United States Army. Now for some battlefield orientation. Gordon's men are placed just on the other side of this house here. That's the Lockett Farm house. Humphrey's men are coming from this direction towards Gordon and from this direction. And they end up pushing Gordon past this direction here, just past my camera, and out into the fields in front of me, right over here. Saylor's Creek is off in that direction over there. So in the end, what's the cost here? Well, we're looking at Ewell and Custis Lee surrendering. Ewell's corps is surrendered. 8,000 casualties on the Confederate side that's killed, wounded, or surrendered here at this battle. A quarter of Lee's army has been completely dissolved. The army's on the run and headed towards Farmsville. Eventually ends up in Appomattox. And within 72 hours, the Army of Northern Virginia is no longer a thing. They will surrender to the United States Army. Right after this battle is over with, Phil Sheridan sends a wire in that says, "I believe if the thing is pressed, the Army will surrender." Something along those lines. Of course, I'm paraphrasing. Lincoln intercepts it and says, "Then let the thing be pressed." That's what they did here. They continue to fight. They get to Appomattox, and they pressed it. United States Army wins, and it's not too long after that that this is all over with, and the Civil War ends with the United States victory. Well, I can't tell you how awesome it's been to be out here at Saylor's Creek along the Civil War Trail's series of signs for Lee's retreat. I've enjoyed every minute of it and enjoyed taking you out here with me. Until next time, this is History with Waffles.